It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstein Network, the show where we look at the dollars and the cents of the sports media business industrial complex in all its legal wrangling. How you doing today, Steve?
I am doing very well, thank you. It's a mission when we always record to keep the dog, quiet. We'll see. He's been on a run today already, but he's begging me for attention as we speak. So we will see. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been good. Steve, I know you like a good rock report. So I was in Oslo, Norway for almost 2 weeks, for heaven's sakes. Just recently, got back a couple days ago. And I did not see any bands or anything there, but everywhere I travel internationally, I track just mentally. It's not an official Quinnipiac poll.
Quinnipiac is how it is.
Yeah, whatever that is, whatever that group is. About what rock teas are popular.
Okay.
So Norway is a good one now because Norway and Scandinavia in general is a metal hotbed.
Yeah, they're all into death metal, and
Yeah.
that's really beyond what I appreciate.
So I thought that was going to be an interesting one, and so almost exclusively it was metal T-shirts. Um, the only
And
like
when you say metal, we're talking about like more metal than Metallica type of stuff.
well, you
Just
saw
to be clear. Yeah.
yes, and you saw your Metallicas and Iron Maidens too, right? So but even per capita probably more than normal,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
yes, definitely some weirder metal. In fact, I counted four T-shirts that I knew were rock T-shirts and I knew were metal bands, but the fonts were so extravagant that I could not read the name of the band without looking like a weird perv and going up and staring. So, so I couldn't even make out but the funniest one was, and I saw this group 3 or 4 times over multiple days. Um, Oslo isn't that big, and I was out and about a good amount. It was a father, probably 50s or whatever, with three kids that I would have guesstimated ranged from 9 to about 16, and all four of them were decked out in Metal Gear, you know, jean jackets, patches, metal tees, and the dad was always in a Cannibal Corpse
Cannibal
t-shirt. So
Corpse.
yeah, so that epitomized it to me as well. And I couldn't even read half the patches on their shirts. But I even saw a Twisted Sister t-shirt. Did
Oh,
you
see,
not?
that's up my alley.
Yeah, I knew that you'd like that one, but you don't see that one very often
Well, and
anymore.
these like death metal, the Scandinavian death metal bands have got the weirdest names. The
Oh yeah,
toilet bowl water.
yeah, right, or all
Kill
kinds
me
of Norse
softly. Yeah, whatever it is.
Norse
Or
mythology stuff. So,
yeah.
so it was fascinating. But metal T-shirts everywhere.
Well, the big metal thing that's coming up. They're like in like a couple weeks in like mid-July is the supposed Black Sabbath goodbye concert. Have you heard about this?
I have.
So for those who don't know, they are playing in England. Um, I guess Liverpool. I'm not sure where in England, but somewhere in England. Aren't they from Liverpool? Isn't that where they're from?
I think so.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but and this is supposedly all four original members: Ozzy, Tony Iommi, Bill Ward, and who's the other Geezer
Geezer
Butler.
Butler. Yeah.
Yeah. Now Ozzy can't even stand up and didn't sing at his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Bill Ward can barely stand up, and so what they've done is they're bringing in like every hard rock band literally on the planet of any renown is supposedly at this show. And so, the weird thing is it's billed as again a Sabbath and Ozzy goodbye show. But I think the working theory is that if they play one or two songs at most, that's all you're going to get, which is why they have like Metallica and a bunch of other bands there. It's almost a scam. It's almost false advertising. I think we'll see.
Well, that's why, and well, also if people you put all those other bands on the bill, at least people feel like they're getting their money's worth.
Well, that's exactly it. And I generally think this is all Sharon Osbourne. Okay, for those who don't know, and Sharon Osbourne is Satan's daughter. She really is, and there's no telling what she set up here, but basically it's exactly what she said. It's in case Ozzy can't stand and can't sing and blah blah blah. You've got a whole bunch of bands there, but we'll see. I have a feeling we're not going to see much of actual Black Sabbath. I'm not a huge Sabbath fan. It's very like ponderous to me. It's not quality hard rock music to me.
Oh, I love Sabbath.
It's just very, even, something like Iron Man, it's just, it's slow and ponderous and, and I don't think Ozzy has a great voice is the other thing, even for metal. I know it's surprising to hear me say this.
I love Sabbath, especially those first probably 4 records. Well, I'm not like a Dio Sabbath guy or anything like that, but yeah, but they, they really were more of a bridge band, and
Yes.
So
they were the first. They were the first of it,
and they would have considered themselves more. I mean, they almost considered themselves part of like the kind of late psychedelic.
Well, Ozzy's like a huge
British
Beatles
hard
fan.
rock, yeah. So like they, in their mind, it's kind of like how the Ramones thought they were really trying to write Beach Boys songs. So but so what they were intended going in and what the output was might be two different things, but they didn't have a construct of themselves as like a hard rock band.
Well, no. I don't think. Yeah, because again, they were the innovators of it.
Yeah,
I just mean by my taste, it's just sort of too slow and ponderous for me to appreciate
sludgy.
too much.
Yeah, yeah. Which is that's actually probably why more like I like it.
And that's not me, so that's our different taste.
Yeah, but it's hard to debate their influence. But yeah, this idea that
we're gonna get 3 hours of Black Sabbath and Ozzy. That's not gonna happen.
No. In fact, I don't want to sound too insensitive, but the most metal thing that could happen would be one of them to die on stage.
It would be like straight out Spinal Tap. Did the drummer in Spinal Tap blow up? I mean,
that one of them. They all kinds of they couldn't keep a drummer around. One blew up, but yeah, which they're working on another Spinal Tap movie right now.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's about to come out in a couple months, I think.
Oh, is it that close?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait about that. I don't know if I've told you, but I worked, I think, the first ever live Spinal Tap show.
Oh, really?
I think it was the first. Yes.
In your roadie days?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I remember Harry Shearer was the biggest jerk you could ever imagine. He was screaming at the crew. And, I remember him saying, I don't know how I can be expected to work under these conditions, and went on and on and on. But the show itself was fabulous. I mean, they had a Stonehenge there that fell out of the ceiling. They had a big giant butt that was blowing gas, for the song Big Bottom. They didn't have bunch of little people running around, like they had in the movie, but they had almost everything else they could fit on a mid-sized stage was there. It was really cool.
Was that on the Break Like the Wind tour?
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Break Like the Wind. Can we all agree at least though that Sharon Osbourne is evil? Can we agree on that much?
I don't ride for Sharon Osbourne. Yeah.
Okay, very good. At least we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, no, I'm not defending her. And she had nothing to do with that first era Black Sabbath. I mean,
she might take claim to it anyway, though.
She may, right? But her Svengali part came later,
and it's mainly because Ozzy was drugged out of his mind, and she, I mean, to her credit, she saved him, saved his career, and it's actually pretty gross what she's doing to him now, because he really, he needs medical help. He's not healthy at all, and she just keeps throwing him out there.
When was the first Ozfest? It's been a while, right? It's been 25 years.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's been a while. I mean, because their kids who are train wrecks themselves, for the most part, were like little. I remember seeing video of them like running around backstage as little kids. Now they're adults.
It was kind of So it's been a dead. And they haven't even had one in a while. I go, although this is
it's because Ozzy can't do anything. But in the last couple of tours, they were, dubbing in vocals on tracks and stuff. It's just not good. It was Ozzy's farewell tour '92. It's what I saw.
His first farewell tour.
His first farewell tour, right?
Well, the innovators of that were the Who.
Yes, who are still touring, sort of today.
Yeah, but they can't stop fighting with Ringo Starr's son,
and firing him and hiring him, firing him and hiring him.
And Pete Townsend just said to the press, like literally, like 6 or 7 days ago that he doesn't understand what Roger Daltrey's problem is, and that he liked Zach Starkey. So now it's even, it's all kinds of nonsense.
It's a little ton of ego, bunch of
Yeah,
narcissists.
right. And also a bunch of like basically 90-year-olds.
90-year-old narcissist.
Yeah, even Zach Starkey is, I think, like in
50s.
his yeah. So
Zach
even
Starkey is whose son is he?
Ringo Starr.
Ringo Starr, that's right.
Yeah. So now Ringo's weighed in and he's bashing Roger Daltrey in the press and stuff.
Well, and
It's
Roger
funny.
Daltrey is also half blind and deaf. He's like
Yeah.
literally the guy out of Pinball Wizard at this point.
Well, I love the Who, but I lost a lot of respect for them when they just continued to tour after John Entwistle died. It
And I
just
don't
gets
know if non-musicians fully understand that John Entwistle is one of the most brilliant people bassists ever.
yeah. No, he was the secret weapon in that band for sure.
Oh, his bass lines are just unbelievable.
All right, Steve. Well, let's transition from the base antics of the late John Entwistle, to what we're supposed to be talking about, which is sports business. Kind of a remarkable case. Well, not the case necessarily, but details of the case of the NFL and collusion and did they collude, blah, 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 has broken over these last few weeks, which kind of strangely came out of like some weird, like, bet between Florio and a writer for CBS about who could get the details first. It became also like the sub story was also like, and they haven't had like a gentleman's bet on, and I think actually Florio lost. Actually, the CBS guy actually got the paperwork quicker. But did they collude? Did they not collude? And this all goes back to these guaranteed contracts. So, Steve, you're the lawyer here, because this one's kind of fascinating because it was like they colluded, but did they collude enough? And so the independent arbiter has decided no, but then all the details now of this case, which everyone involved were trying to keep quiet, especially the NFL, but now all this dirty laundry is spilling out all over the media.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple different stories on this, but what we're looking at here is it was on Yahoo Sports. NFL collusion ruling. Arbiter reportedly found NFL Roger Goodell encouraged teams to reduce guarantees for veterans by Chris. I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. Quick, CWIK, dated June 24th, 2025. And yeah, I mean, you have to take anything Mike Florio says with a grain of salt. I am. He's not terrible in his reporting of facts. What he's terrible about is his opinions, and he's just a miserable person. And he's not good with analysis, and he thinks he is, and that's the worst kind. But so
this
what?
Pablo Torre was the one that got.
Yeah,
It was Pablo Torre and Mike Florio that had this kind of like they knew that there was a there, and they were like, which one of us is going to get there first? And so Pablo Torre actually did get there first.
yeah. So the story here, though, is that there was an arbitration hearing, and they don't really say what the arbitration hearing was for. But the arbiter has a statement in the opinion that he wrote about collusion by the NFL. And what it says is, quote, there is little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees in veterans contracts at the March 2022 annual owners meeting. But then the NFL won the grievance. And the arbiter, whose name was Christopher Droney, ruled that, and this is quoting the story, despite the NFL encouraging collusion, he could not prove by clear preponderance that NFL teams acted on advice. I mean, look, collusion's bad. However, I also don't think anytime the NFL owners or the NFL management mentions or discusses player salaries, that does not mean this is illegal collusion. Okay. I mean, and what this is all about, and the story goes into details, what this is all about basically is in the wake of the Deshaun Watson contract, because to backtrack, Deshaun Watson was accused of a myriad of sexual misconduct claims. We did a story on it here. I'm not going to go into details here. A whole bunch of women. And in the wake of, he got suspended for 8 games or something. And then he got a fully guaranteed $230 million contract from the Browns. Clearly, the NFL management doesn't want that. And so what Florio and this other guy, what was his name?
Pablo Torre,
are insinuating here is that the NFL colluded, meaning they got together to decide that none of them were going to give guaranteed contracts. That's where this is going. Now, I have little doubt that they talked about it. The NFL ownership, it does not want to set a precedent of guaranteed contracts. So the trick here, though, is that um, what the arbiter basically said is they talked about it, but there was not enough evidence. And this, the legal standard in this case is clear preponderance to suggest that the ownership acted on it. That's what he's saying. That's the break point. So it's if you could say like we talked about murdering somebody, but we didn't actually murder somebody. Whereas
Yeah,
it, that's where we're going with it.
yeah, which I think that's why Torre and Florio were so interested in getting the paperwork, right? Because to see what actually happened. So the news here is sort of much more that the arbiter, to your point, so basically, some management subcommittee, or I think it's actually maybe even they may even been contractors, basically told the NFL, here's what you should do. Here's the plan to collude. And then the NFL decided basically to not enact that plan, or to not officially enact that plan and stay to kind of a wink wink, type of
Well, I mean,
versions.
again, it's not necessarily illegal collusion for ownership to talk about general strategy with regard to contracts.
Yeah, but it seems to me the arbiter said that if they had actually implemented the advice of the
I
management
agree. I agree.
consultants,
But
yeah.
again, there's a difference between you and I sitting down and going, it's generally speaking, if, we don't really need fully guaranteed contracts versus that Roger Goodell standing up and saying, all of you need to understand that not one of you will do this. And then we say, yes, sir, we don't. There's a big difference there.
Right. So it reminds me of this guy I worked with when I was a tour guide in a Shirley plantation, which was a
I
old
learned something new about you every day.
an ancient plant, well, not ancient, I guess, a plantation that's basically between Williamsburg and Richmond, and goes back to the 1600s, blah, blah, blah. I won't bore you on that. But so there would be dead times. So I was one of the other tour guides told me this crazy story about how his girlfriend had cheated on him and with a conductor, a musical conductor in New York City, and that all he was doing was drinking vodka and playing the first person shooter game Doom this a long time ago, and that he got in his car with his gun, drove all the way to New York City, and got out. This is a wild story to be telling somebody just in like a 15-minute break at work, but got all the way to the guy's door with the gun, then finally decided that this was a bad idea and got back in his car and drove back to Richmond. So there you go. There's like his intention. So there you go. But he did not actually cross the line.
After
And
15 hours in a car, decided
well, it's only seven,
for
but yeah.
seven. That's yeah. I mean, that's not a bad example. It's again, they talked about things, and I think it's totally appropriate for ownership and NFL management to discuss, the future of NFL salary caps and what type of contracts do we want, on our teams versus we're going to get together and we're going to all make sure right here and now that nobody's going to ever give a guaranteed contract again. And if the rest of you, if you don't, we're going to beat you with the wet noodle. There is a difference there. And that is sort of what the arbiter is saying here. Yes, they talked about it. No, there's not evidence that anybody acted on it. And as a matter of fact, I'm not sure the timing here, but Kirk Cousins also got a fully guaranteed contract. Okay.
Well, he's the originator. I mean, he's the one that, like, I mean,
Yeah,
this
it
was
didn't
all
start with Watson.
no
And
Watson
Watson
because
is
of
also a special case because Deshaun Watson got in a massive amount of trouble for his horrible, miserable conduct. And the discussion also could have been, look, no, we don't want to set a precedent, but we particularly don't want to do it with a guy as slimy as Sean Watson again.
or put ourselves like even let's just put generic future players. We don't want to have these things blow up when something happens to them, right? Like we don't want to be locked in.
Right.
So yeah, it's so funny. Cousins definitely was he's the Black Sabbath here, but he's sort of like
He was before
sidelined
Watson, when he? Yeah, he was before
by
Watson.
2 years, I think, maybe
Yeah, yeah,
three.
yeah.
So and let's be clear, if even if Watson ended up being not good, but he was clean, didn't have any of the scandals, I don't think this happens. I think to your point, I think now they might have been like, "Whoa, like maybe there's a cautionary tale. We shouldn't be giving guaranteed play money to players who maybe aren't and don't end up being that good." But like, because this article goes on to say, because if you remember, you know, off the backs of Watson, you had Russell Wilson, you had Kyler Murray,
All
you
better
had
players than
Jackson
Sean
in
Watson.
Baltimore. So, and remember, we've even commented on it, and definitely the NFL world was talking about it. Like, wow, all these quarterbacks are not like the era of the people did notice the era of the guaranteed contracts, even for superstar quarterbacks, seems to be over. Or they would be guaranteeing a lesser amount, and then there'd be a third that would be, just not the Watson or Cousins deals. So everyone was noticing, like, everyone was saying, "Oh, the owners just aren't willing to do that." But it would be interesting to me if Watson just, was mediocre, but was just normal in terms of his personal life and didn't have all
He
the
didn't have
scandals.
30 women,
Right.
accusing him of
If we would
conduct.
have actually seen, like, the Jacksons or the Kyler
Well,
Murrays or the quarterback, it would have looked more like the Cousins contract. I do wonder to what degree the Watson fallout was less about on the field and more about like we don't want to sit in these contracts when these personal lives blow up.
Well, there's that, yeah, but I also think that you got to use like Major League Baseball as an example. In Major League Baseball, almost every contract is fully guaranteed in Major League Baseball, but you know what they don't have is a salary cap. You can't really have, and what the NFL does not want to do is end up like baseball, where they have eventually every contract is guaranteed. You start with the quarterbacks, it trickles down to everybody else eventually, but you can't really do that when you have a very strict salary cap like the NFL has. It's that one does not, go with the other very well, and so I don't, and I don't think I think the NFL knows that, and they don't want to go down this route at all. And the truth of the matter is, like um what's his Lamar Jackson is going to get all his money anyway. They're not going to cut Lamar Jackson. Just because the contract's fully guaranteed, not fully guaranteed doesn't mean they won't get all the money. They just if they do every year of the contract, they're going to get the money. First of all, but no, I think it has to do with the fact that it would really ruin the salary cap if all these contracts are guaranteed. 100% guaranteed. That's part of it. It just one does not go well with the other. But NFL ultimately does not want to turn into baseball. That's what this is about. We're not guaranteeing every contract, and this is the start. So we're just not going to do it.
Now, there's also a bunch of juicy details about that time period and the back and forth. So Russell Wilson does. I mean, his poor. Is there, you know, has there been a fall from grace as fast as Russell Wilson to the point of like let Russ cook just a couple of years ago to what's happened to his career
Not
now?
without somebody who hasn't massively screwed it up because of their own
No, I'm talking about it
misconduct.
within the realm of normal.
Yeah, within the realm of normal, he's up there. Certainly, we could probably come up with a few more we thought about it, but he's up there. Yeah.
So it's he's taking. I mean, so this is not from the article that we looked at, but I saw this other places, and now I found the quote. One thing that DeMaurice Smith was like really pissed at Russell Wilson for not basically fighting the fight about the guarantee contract because the Wilson contract with Broncos was one of those first one that people were like, oh, that's interesting, because it doesn't have the guarantees. Like here's someone that like theoretically would have been on that guarantee path. And it has a quote that says, or Torre is saying that DeMaurice Smith said at one point he used an expletive that I will not share here. Also called J.C. Treader called Russell Wilson with a quote unquote wuss. And then he said Wilson, instead of being the guy that made the guaranteeing contracts the norm, he's the guy that ruined it for everyone else. So like it also is just showing all of the kind of Game of Thrones backroom stuff that was happening, as the owners like, kind of like let's call it soft colluding, or we're putting their foot down on the guaranteed contracts. All those big time quarterbacks that were in the wake of the Watson deal, and then all of the agent union team, all of those backdoor conversations that were happening as the Watson deal was having its fallout, and these big name quarterbacks were looking. Are we going to solidify this as the norm for quarterbacks, or is this going to revert to normal?
Well, Russell Wilson doesn't have an obligation to speak for everyone else. It's dumb to blame him. From that side, Russell Wilson needs to do what's best for himself. He doesn't have an obligation to set any precedent, and the people who are blaming him, they're being ridiculous.
Yeah. It was just the infighting at the time.
I'm not saying about you. I'm just saying, the story you're talking about. It's
and
ridiculous.
Nobody did. No, it's not like another. It's not like Jackson came and defended the line, so to speak. Nobody got him after that.
Yeah, well, and because should Kirk Cousins have got a fully guaranteed contract? Was he worth it? No,
Twice.
Of course not.
Twice, by the way.
Yeah, he would. No, of course he wasn't worth it. He didn't do. Was he terrible? No, but was he some kind of revolutionary quarterback that took his teams to the Super Bowl? No, and he just got replaced by a rookie, Michael Penix. They signed him to a contract, and then they drafted Michael Penix immediately after that. Meaning, whoops, we bought the Bentley, and now I regret buying the Bentley, but I can't return it.
I'd actually argue that because also the numbers weren't anywhere near the same, just because they were guaranteed. Like the actual, even if you could find, because he actually signed 2 guaranteed contracts with the Vikings. So, but they weren't anywhere near the monetary levels of the Watson deal. I'd actually argue the Vikings probably got their money's worth at the time. But yeah. It's fascinating stuff. But basically, what we're seeing is now. I mean, this really is a gossip rag stuff because we're seeing all of the details about that era of contract negotiation and quarterbacks come to light.
I guess we should have said this is going back several years.
Yeah,
the arbitration here, it doesn't give a year. No, it does. Okay, so this is going back to 2022. So it's going back 3 years.
It's long enough. We're almost on the other side of that Watson contract.
Yeah, kind of right. And so I would just say to people that the difference here is that just because the owners talked about strategy with regard to contracts does not mean that there was active collusion. Because again, what the arbitrator stated in this hearing that he couldn't determine to a clear preponderance of evidence that they had actually done anything about it. This is just, it's talk about strategy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And again, Mike Flory has a perspective here too, and I think his perspective is a bit jaded in this story.
And I think that the deal between Torre, not deal, but like the kind of gentleman's bet between Torre, and I think there was even terms of a bet that between Torre and Florio was that we'd sure love to know the path that got to these decisions. What were the details, and that's what they dug.
Yeah. And I wasn't aware of the bet. I didn't see that in the story.
It's not in that story. It was in somewhere else. I read about that over the last couple of weeks because the story's kind of been front page news in NFL circles, especially because it's off season.
Yeah, because there's very little to talk about.
Yeah, but if Watson wasn't getting massage hand jobs from 50 different women, I think probably guaranteed contracts are the norm now. I think that has more to do with
that's what the NFL doesn't want.
Right. Then
what they're talking about.
Right. So if he was just normal, I think
if he had done well, because he didn't play well on top of that.
Yeah, and that's hard. It's almost hard to separate that out between the two things at this point because he was
sure.
Yeah. Because I mean, who knows how the kind of effect that.
Well, look at like a guy like Tiger Woods. When his career started to fall apart was when his wife was chasing him down the driveway with a golf club. Because of all his personal foibles, and after that, he never recovered. And so stuff like this.
He did win a Master after that.
Was that after?
Yeah, he won one. Yeah, I mean, they were like kind of
apart.
Yes, he was not consistent and all that.
No.
He had like a couple times where he was able.
He never stayed Tiger Woods. And my point, and we're not talking about golf today. My point is, sometimes you can't separate things. Like Deshaun Watson's personal conduct clearly affected his mentality and his ability to perform on the field because it's a massive mental thing. Dealing with all that stuff. So you might be right. There might have been, if Watson had been a resounding success and God help us, the Cleveland Browns went to the Super Bowl or something, sure, you might have seen a bunch of guaranteed contracts possibly.
Right. Or if he just, didn't have any of the personal stuff and
he would have had to do well though.
Top 10 quarterback.
He would have had to do something to show he's worth it.
Yeah. But I think that spooked the NFL owners as much as anything.
Absolutely.
It's not being locked in there.
I just want to emphasize that talk does not mean collusion.
Yeah, which is what the arbiter said.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Um, so put some respect on Cousins' name though, because he's the true innovator here. Um, so talk about innovators and maybe the end of eras and all of that stuff. We're a little bit late on this, but it's too kind of massive to not comment on. But the Lakers are in the process of being sold and leaving the legendary Buss family. Although Jeannie apparently is still going to have a role.
Well, yeah, this is my former team, the Los Angeles Lakers. Um, I had to dump him when LeBron James showed up because he's just the worst. But so the story here is that the Buss family, after 46 years, is finally selling the Lakers. And the main point of this story is that their valuation is $10 billion.
Yeah.
That is the highest valuation of a professional sports team of any league in the world. We just talked about this a month ago about NBA valuations, and we did neither one of us nor the story we quoted had the Lakers at $10 billion. The other takeaway here, so the owner, the buyer is Mark Walter. Mark Walter is the owner of the Dodgers, and he also owns apparently stakes in Chelsea, which is the English soccer team, an F1 team, and the minor backup here is the WNBA team in LA. Now, but what I wanted to emphasize here is he holds a 26% stake in the Lakers already. I wasn't even aware that the Buss family had sold 26% to him, but this is happens more and more. Okay. We've talked about this before. When professional sports leagues are looking for new owners, they will frequently start with minority shareholders. Okay. Because they're already vetted, they're already approved. And in this case, Mark Walter is not out of nowhere. He's a Major League Baseball owner, but he already holds a minor league stake, so people already know him. He's already approved, and also, he only has to buy out. He's not buying 100% of 10 billion. Okay, because Buzz family's keeping 15%, so that's 85%. And so if you subtract 85 minus 26, from that is what, 59%? Is that what it is? 85? No,
Close
no,
enough.
no, no, that's not. Yeah, it is 59. And so what he's really paying is something along the lines of 5.9 billion. It's just the valuation, but the valuation is important. That is way more than what I thought even the Dodgers were going to be valued at. What does that say about what happens when the Patriots or the Cowboys get sold?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is gonna. I mean, this is setting a high watermark, like in a way that you have like a kind of generational floods. That's new high watermark. I think when we looked at this before a few times, I think the NBAs were in the eight million a billion,
The
sorry, 8
highest one,
billion.
but the lower
Yeah,
ones were in the
right.
couple billion.
So I can't say I'm shocked.
I was shocked at 10 billion.
Um, I mean, well, let me couch that. Like, I did like like I was like, whoa, so I had that kind of reaction. But but at the same time, if you look at the level of that brand, and if you're starting to see where these valuations have gone, I can't say I'm somewhere. I'm more surprised than shocked. Maybe is how I describe that. But if you look at this, I mean, what an investment by Jerry Buss, and you look on the return on that investment for the Buss family
It's
is
ridiculous.
absolutely insane, especially considering that they made tons of money in this in between time as owners, right? So
The story that did I quote the story, by the way? Uh, Sorry, I've also okay. So the story is also from Yahoo Sports. It says Buzz family reportedly to sell majority ownership of the Los Angeles Lakers to Mark Walter in record $10 billion deal by Ryan Young, staff writer, dated June 18th, 2025. And then the story mentions that Dr. Jerry Buss, who is the father of Jeannie Buss, bought the team for $67.5 million in 1979, and that's what
from Jack Kent Cook.
From Jack Kent Cook, former Redskins owner, and that was the start of the HBO series Winning Time.
Yeah,
Was that transaction? Yeah, and so that's a return on investment of more than 1,000%.
Yeah,
You know,
right. You make
so that's like what 1,400%, something like that.
now it took him a while to turn it around, but
But he's also making money, to your point, of all
that's right.
these
Yeah,
decades.
right. So
Lakers
right.
making a lot of money.
Let's even because they they walked a tightrope. Let's call it for the first 10 years, right? It was touch and go. But after that point, they're making money hand over fist, and then they sell it for 10 billion.
It's the end of an era, though. Those of us, again, I kind of divorced myself from the Lakers when LeBron James showed up, because I just can't stand that guy. But the Bus family has been synonymous with Los Angeles and with the Lakers and with Magic Johnson and all of
And
it.
really, the rise of the NBA. I mean, I think I
Yes,
think it's not. They're they're the Bus family and their ownership of the Lakers is even bigger than the Lakers. I mean, you can
yes.
that family was an architect of the modern NBA to a large degree, and then the
And
modern
Red
NBA that
Auerbach
started in
too.
the 80s and 90s. Yes, and their rivalry.
Yeah, Red Auerbach was a former owner of the Celtics, and it's no longer in his family's hands
He
either.
was
But
never no, he was never technically the owner. He was always just a general manager. Maybe he was
you're right. I'm sorry. You're right.
yeah,
But but
architect
regardless,
of the but he wasn't the owner. Yeah.
but the Buss family, Jerry Buss was the architect of
Yes.
the rise of the Lakers. Certainly along with the coach and all of that, and Phil West. We don't need to go over that. But yes, it's the end of an era for the Lakers and for Los Angeles. But
Not for Jeannie though, apparently.
no, but she's gonna. What the story says, what Chris is talking about is, story says that the Buss family is going to keep 15% for some period of time as a minority stake. Now, 15% does not mean that they're going to have any management say so, anything, because the way these, if for those of you who don't understand this, all the NFL, Major League Baseball, and the NBA all designate an owner, and it's the majority stakeholder, and that's the one who votes, and that's the one who deals with the league. So it really, at this point, if the Buss family keeps 15%, it's just a profit thing, and they're
But I think
out
they're keeping her around in her
for a
executive role
while
too.
as yeah, but she's not. It's not going to be forever though. But Mark Walter has become the new scion of Los Angeles sports.
Right.
Owns the
Huge
Dodgers,
properties, yeah.
owns the Lakers, F1, all of that. He is becoming the new face of Los Angeles.
And whatever they're calling it today, I think the forum, basically, right, or whatever.
It's got a new. Well, it's not the Forum anymore. It's the old Staples Center. Forum is still there, but they played in what used to be called the Staples Center, and that
was Crypto Arena, and I think it's something else now, right?
Yeah, right.
But it also comes with that building.
Yes. So I mean, I think this really says a lot as to valuation of other top teams, the Yankees, the Cowboys, the Celtics. 10 billion. This has got to be a new floor. One of those big time teams is never going to take less than 10 billion now.
Yeah, and it helps the small fish too, because it means your 2.7, 3.2 billion evaluation probably jumps to 5.
Yeah, your Milwaukee Bucks of the world are going to get more. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
But I want to say that the valuation thing that we did a couple months ago for the NBA had the Lakers at like 8 or something like that.
Yeah, it was up somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. So this is it always seems like these sales always exceed the published valuations, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, that's what it takes to get a deal done is different than nerds at Forbes putting something together.
And by the way, I'd point out that it appears as though so two things. First, Walters had the story claims, the Yahoo Sports story claims that Walters had the right of first refusal to purchase the Buss family's interest, and then the Buss family only had a 66% stake. So when I was saying 85%, I was assuming that the Buss family owned the rest of it. They apparently don't. There's other minority partners. So all he really bought was 40%. So 40% of 10 billion is 4 billion, and so that's what he's actually physically paying is 4 billion to the Buss family.
I'd be willing to bet this was the intention all along, right?
Of course. Well, that's where I was going in the first place. Is if you're looking for new owners, start with the minority partners, both for new teams and for new owners of existing teams and stuff. This is exactly how it works.
It's exactly what happened, in which wasn't the norm back then, but this is for, especially for a DC context. This is exactly what Ted Leonsis did. He partnered with what was the owner's name? Poyle? No, Poland,
A
right?
Poland, a
A Poland.
Poland.
He partnered with him, bought the Capitals outright. I actually think he bought a stake, then he bought the Capitals outright. And at that point, there was always a phased plan for him to take over the Bullet/Wizards and, well, MCI Arena, what's now the Capital One Arena, whatever. So that actually look no further than what happened between Leonsis and Poland as a precursor, because that was exactly this situation with, basically staged purchasing, and eventually Leonsis, ends up, owning everything, and that was all the intention all along.
This is what I was saying. I mean, if you're looking for future owners, you're trying to predict future owners, look for influential, wealthy minority shareholders, existing minority shareholders. That is exactly what we're talking about here. In the case of Walters, he's Southern California already. It made perfect sense. But there have also been times in which guys like Walters have been bought other teams. They may be in a minority stakeholder in one team, and then they buy some other random team. Like the old owner of the Dodgers, that was the case, Frank McCourt. He started out, trying to buy the Boston Red Sox. He's from Boston, and had, I think, a minority shareholder. He ended up buying the Dodgers, and it went, horribly, horribly wrong, of course. But that's exactly what the kind of thing happens here. So because it makes sense. If the Buss family wanted to sell, who are they going to look to first? The guy they know, who's right down the hall from them.
Yeah, so fascinating stuff. It's an end of a sort of sports, cultural, business era to see the Buss exit from the ownership of that
Yes,
franchise. Very much. I mean, you could make the case that they're very much responsible for, the presentation and the management of in modern American sports, not just even
absolutely.
NBA.
Don't you
So
wonder though how much money Genie's getting versus the near do well
yeah,
sons,
those idiot
the
sons.
brothers? Yeah,
I mean, they're all getting giant paydays, but yes, I imagine she's got the genie package.
I hope so for her
Yeah,
sake.
yeah, you would hope. Um, this next story I found kind of fascinating. Maybe not even for its. Well, I find it fascinating at two levels, which you can get into. But and we're looking at Yahoo Sports. We're all over Yahoo Sports today. I know it's Andy
It's I
Baxter.
know it's normally it's
Yeah.
CNBC. Today we're Yahoo.
Um, So Fernando Tatis Jr. is basically suing Big League Advance, basically claiming that he was put into a predatory deal as a minor leaguer, so that they're basically getting too much of the cut of his salary once he hit. Is the long and the short of it, and so suing to basically probably to get out of that contract and to get some damages from there. So I'll pause on what I think is the really fascinating second part of the story so Steve can catch us up on exactly what they're fighting in court about.
This is a payday lending loan on steroids.
Yeah, right. I thought the same thing.
This is exactly what it is. And so what by the way, the author was Andy Backstrom, dated June 24th. You guys want to find it, that's the story. But so apparently what happened here is a company called Big League Advance signed a contract, a future earnings contract, when he was a minor leaguer, while still in the DR, Dominican Republic, back in 2017. And it essentially said, we're going to pay you this small amount of money right now in exchange for 10% of your future or major league earnings. That's what this is. This is literally a payday lending loan. It's exactly what it is. And so now that Fernando Tatis is signed a 10-year, 14-year, $340 million deal, the point here is that this Big League Advance is going to get 10% of that, meaning 34 million, on the basis of their in relative terms, very small investment in some poor, broke, third world kid who is great at baseball. And so now Fernando Tatis has sued to get this deal voided, and I can't really blame him. It's gross and horrible, this kind of contract. Um, I mean, it's what he's claiming, by the way, that BLA misrepresented itself and violated California consumer protection laws by hiding its unlicensed status and kind of bullying naive, Dominican Republic, kid into signing this thing. So I don't blame him. It's I don't think contractually he's going to have much of a claim. You really have to rely on California consumer protection laws, which I'm not an expert in at all. But I think he's going to have to rely on that and less on just a breach of contract because he's not going to have one. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I hope he wins this case, right?
Oh, me too. It's horrible.
Yeah, so yeah, and the payday loans are horrible as a general practice, from the street corner to something like this on steroids. However, there are some interesting details on this that make me raise a little bit of an eyebrow, and that is in that this is not some kid from, playing discovered playing pickup baseball or whatever in Central or South America. This is a son of a former
That's a good point.
Major League Baseball player who played 11 Major League Baseball seasons. Okay.
Yeah. Can I stop you right there? That's a good point. I should have, the way I was stating it, I was probably unintentionally misrepresenting it because it should be said he's not a kid from DR. He was from DR, but his father was a Major League Baseball player. So yeah, that's a good point.
So, some personal responsibility. Look at me. Look at me. I'm like the
You're taking my side of it. I know.
But there's some personal responsibility part that gives me, like, come on, dude. Because some of the, beyond just the complete predatory nature of this, part of the appeal of this kind of deal is that, and the article even says this, is that you put your player that you signs this deal, you get better training, you get money to do the things that's going to put you on the path to becoming a Major League Baseball player. It gets you into rooms, so to speak. So
did he have all that with his dad?
Yes. So this guy, you're the son of a 11-year Major League Baseball player. Like, theoretically, you would at least know who to talk to. You would at least know the scouting system. You would at least know what it takes from a physical standpoint, training standpoint, what the paths or the base paths, if you will, towards this end game. If your father played for 11 seasons, so like, what would motivate you? This is not the use case for this kind of, like, what kind of dumbass signs this deal with that kind of background?
Wouldn't you have thought to ask your father about it?
Right. So, like, or that at least don't need those kind of services.
Maybe his father's an idiot too.
I mean, yeah. I mean, or who knows what kind of relationship they have, right? So
Right.
we're there's lots of gaps here, but I find that very interesting. And this is also the Tatis Jr., who's already served an 80-game suspension for PEDs.
Yeah, he's not exactly innocent here.
Right. So, like, so if to me, it's like, okay, like, again, I hope he wins. I hate.
It's a horrible contract, and it truly is a payday lending loan for
right. And I would love
players
to see this kind of stuff eradicated. So if this does that, yay.
And we don't know. We didn't do any deep dive at all into California consumer protection laws. Don't know what they say at all.
And it probably is a favorable environment
I would
to do this. But I do find it interesting. Is Tatis Jr. here your right poster boy here? Because, like, you could really assign some personal culpability to a person like this signing this deal to begin with.
But to your point, maybe he doesn't have a relationship with his father. We don't know. Like
we don't know.
But there surely would be, like,
interesting use case.
The way I was originally portraying it, before you corrected me correctly, was as he's an innocent DR kid. And he is a DR kid, but he's not an innocent DR kid. So yeah, you could maybe find, if you wanted to find a better plaintiff, there would be out there. There's a lot of innocent, totally naive DR kids out there who would probably sign these same things. Would be my guess.
And he says the right things, or he's at least, had smart people put the quotes in his mouth about this.
I'll take the latter for 500, Alex.
Yeah. That he does want to. He says I'm fighting this battle not just for myself, but for everyone who's still chasing their dream and hoping to provide a better life for the family. I want to help protect those young players who don't yet know how to protect themselves from these predatory lenders and illegal financial schemes. And listen, rich people get ripped off in bad schemes just as over time, just as easily as poor people
See
do. So,
Madoff, Bernie.
right. So yeah. So fraud is fraud, right? So like it doesn't really matter who the victim is. I just think this is, it's an interesting plaintiff here.
I don't think it's less fraud and more consumer protection problems, because it may not be fraudulent. The contract may be abundantly clear. We're going to give you this amount of money now, and in exchange, you're going to give us 10% of your future earnings as a Major League Baseball player. That's not really fraud. It's just a horrible contract.
Yeah, unfortunately, that payday lender down the block in most major U.S. cities is legally operating.
Or for that matter, like these commercials of these payday advance credit cards you can get, or like accounts, and it says, do you need to get paid today? And they have some smiling person in their car. I got paid today. Well, what goes unsaid in that, of course, is you're giving a part of your paycheck to the company that's advancing it. They don't say how much it is.
Well, what I find fascinating, this crosses over into my line of work, my day job stuff a little bit, or medium a bit actually, is that what trend that we've noticed is that these practices and techniques have jumped from the urban center payday loan check cashing corner store to your point, the payroll service providers themselves, who are now offering as intermediaries between an employer and employee. Basically, they're handling payroll. They're now, as that middle point, they're offering these services, so that you can get your paycheck a week earlier or a partial. And so they're taking all of those practices from the corner payday lending check cashing place and actually embedding them in payroll services themselves,
spraying it with a bit of perfume and continuing on with it.
Right. If it's through my provider, so it must be legit. And again, legally it's legit, but like if you're not reading the fine print, you're throwing whole chunks of your paycheck out the door.
I don't have a clue how much money they take for those things. I mean, for the Tatis story, it was 10% of future earnings. I don't have a clue how much, but it's not going to be a small amount, would be my guess.
In fact, I think that if you look at just traditional
payday interest rates for payday loans are outrageous. That was the original point why the consumer protection,
right? They're more in the 30-40.
Yes, that's why they got on the radar of a bunch of different states in the first place, and they are illegal in some states.
Yeah, so I hope he wins, but we'll see. Also, I'd be remiss to say, we should say, R.I.P. Dave Parker. What a heartbreaking story that he doesn't make it to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Yeah, the reason why Chris brought it up is if you scan down the Yahoo story, the next story down was Dave Parker.
Yeah, it just broke yesterday. Yesterday would have been
Saturday, which is the June 28th. Yeah, Dave Parker passed away at age 74. Didn't make it to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Which is
by just a little bit, right? Isn't that usually in July? When do they usually do the induction ceremony?
I don't know.
I thought it was in summer. I thought it was during the baseball season.
Anyway, it's certainly coming up at some point, here fairly soon.
But that's
it's along the lines of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They wait so long to induct these, some of these bands, and some of them are gone by the time they do.
Dave Parker was a little bit before my time, although I watched him in his later years.
I'm aware of him, but that's it.
I remember watching him a little bit, like maybe in his last final couple seasons. He's always, I always liked Dave Parker.
Yeah,
so
rest in peace,
Dave Parker.
All right, rest in peace to Fernando Tatis's paycheck.
Steve, what's going on in the hog side? You probably, the quiet time is, you only got a little bit of slumber time here, and then things are going to start.
Well, see, to fill the void in the quiet time, what I've been doing is digging around into Redskins history, and what I've done is I've done columns on who are the best in history. I've done kick and punt returners. I've done running backs. And I'm working on wide receivers, which that'll be published this coming week when you're listening to this. And so for the running back one, I went way overboard and came up with a statistical formula to determine who was the best running back in Washington history. And surprisingly enough, my formula spit out John Riggins, which I could have guessed without doing all the work I did, of course.
Right.
But we have all that. Those are fun. So I hope you read that. And then we have all of our regular written content. And we have, of course, the Hogside Podcast, which is released every Thursday.
Yeah, file that under when data confirms our preconceived notions.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And but for the wide receiver one, which isn't published it will be published by the time you listen to this. Um, I start off, I didn't do a formula for that one. I just start off and said, look, Art Monk is the best receiver in Redskins history. Don't argue with me about it. It's Art Monk. Let's talk about everybody else. That's the way I framed this one because I didn't want to prove the obvious for a second week in a row.
Although if you crunching the numbers, would Charlie Taylor be close?
No,
No.
not if you, it would be on the list, but Charlie Taylor has more receiving touchdowns than Monk, but everything else Monk was ahead of him on.
Yeah, because Monk basically destroyed most of his team records.
Yes.
All right. Well, there we go. And we will see you in a few weeks.